Okay, now there is another type of testing that we can do in hypnotherapy, and it's called trance testing. It's testing to make sure that your client is in a hypnotic trance. Now, this can be a minefield, especially when you're starting out. So for now, I would say to you, testing the therapy is far more important than testing to make sure your client is in a trance. And the problem with trance ratification, as it's called, the problem is that the experience of hypnosis is so subjective that some people just won't respond well to you testing to see if they're in a trance. And what do I mean when I say testing to see if someone is in a trance? Well, there are different sets of ratification procedures, and they're here in your book under the chapter called Testing Therapy. And they go into a few different categories. In fact, there's 4. So we have catalepsy. Catalepsy is eye catalepsy, where the eyes are sealed shut. We have arm catalepsy, where the arm is stiff and rigid. We have a limb or leg catalepsy. And then we have anesthesia. Anesthesia is where you create a feeling of numbness, say on the back of somebody's hand. Now, in the old days, we used to use this as a form of pain control, but it's really not all that effective anymore. So what we would do is we would create a feeling of numbness in the back of the hand, and then we would take that feeling of numbness and transfer it to an area of the client's body where they were experiencing pain. As I say, we don't really use that anymore because it's not as effective as some of the other methods that we now have for pain control. And then the other thing that we have is amnesia. And amnesia is where you forget things. And so that can be very useful in hypnosis, because imagine how great it would be if you wanted to lose weight and you always forgot to go down the sugar aisle every time you went shopping. Imagine how great that would be. It's that when you're just busy in the supermarket, if you consistently forgot to go down the aisle where all the biscuits and crisps and chocolates were, wouldn't that be really remarkable? So amnesia like that can be extremely beneficial in hypnosis. And then the other thing that we have is the opposite of amnesia, and that's hypermnesia. That's where you have this enhanced recall, this ability to remember things far better than you would in the ordinary waking state. And then we have idiodynamics. And idiodynamics is also called the voice of the unconscious. And idiodynamics manifests itself in so many different ways. So when you're nodding your head or shrugging your shoulders, or you're kind of, looking, showing that you're not really believing with your eyes, these are all your body's way of actually communicating what you are feeling or experiencing on a subconscious level. And another idiodynamic response we have is actually using the fingers and creating yes and no and maybe fingers. And that can be extremely interesting. And that's something that we cover on the diploma course. So there are lots of different ways to test to make sure that your clients are in hypnosis, okay? And some of these tests are great fun to use, and they're great fun to do. And in fact, I have a video below that shows you how I use these, and I actually run through a whole load of tests with one particular client, so make sure that you check it out. But for now, what I would say to you is to not focus really on testing to make sure that your client is in trance, but instead to use the hypnotic phenomena that I've just described as your tools and accessories to make sure that the experience is really, really good. And let me explain what I mean. So when you're working with your clients, you are naturally creating amnesia. When you've done a few case study clients, I bet you some of your clients will tell you at the end of the session, I don't remember anything you said. I remembered the start, I remembered the end, but I don't remember anything in the middle. I guarantee you that at some stage along the line, you're going to be using the cloud technique and you're going to say those magic words to your clients. In a moment, I'm going to count from 1 to 10. And on the number 10, I'm going to clap my hands loudly, but please don't open your eyes. And you'll do your count, and the thoughts, feelings, behaviors will be eliminated, and boom, you're going to clap your hands loudly. And their eyes will open because they will not have heard anything that you've said, but yet they haven't been asleep. So amnesia is a natural part of hypnosis anyway. And time distortion is another one. So many clients will tell you that the session just seemed like 20 minutes, even though it was maybe an hour. So the best way to use hypnotic phenomena is to just allow it to naturally show itself up in your hypnosis sessions. Because it's too much too soon for you to start thinking about creating eye catalepsy or creating a stiff and rigid arm in your sessions just now. It's far more important that you concentrate on testing the therapy at the end. So when will we actually do this? Well, we will do this when we meet in person. I will show you how to do these things. And we will also do it as we move through the diploma course. There are some great hypnotic inductions that include quite a few of this hypnotic phenomena, and you're going to learn how to do those. So that's a quick run through hypnotic phenomena and how it shows itself up in the sessions. But before we go, there's another thing that you need to be aware of. You know, when we did the suggestibility tests, and you did this one here, the authoritative one, where you were quite authoritative in your tone, you were giving orders to your client for the hands to move closer, and in a moment that they would touch and meet. If your client is getting a good response, a physical response on a test like that, or if you are doing the heavy and light one and you're getting a good response, either the height or depth on this one, well, then your client has got a good physical response. They're the clients that will respond best to the hypnotic phenomena, such as the rigid arm or sealing the eyes shut or creating a feeling of numbness. But if you're doing your suggestibility tests, and if your client has got that internal dialogue where they're questioning things, or there's a potential that they have an inner voice that sabotages their success, well, you can automatically see that if you're telling them that in a moment's sleep your eyes are sealed shut and you just cannot open them, and the harder you try, the more impossible it is, well, that questioning voice is going to jump up and it's going to go, no, those eyes aren't sealed, I can open them, and the eyes will pop open. So the suggestibility tests help to inform whether you'll get a good result or not when you test the trance, when you're testing for trance. And then the other clients that we have are those that have an emotional response when they're actually doing the metal and magnet and the heavy and light test. So, you know, if a client has an emotional response, maybe those hands are just not moving at all. But inside their mind, they're seeing colours, they're feeling the energy, but there's nothing physically happening out here. Again, that would let you know that you're going to take a risk by doing something authoritative, such as suggesting that their eyes will be sealed shut and they just won't open. Because although they might be having those sensations inside, physically, they may not show the effects of that. So just as physically their hands didn't move closer in the suggestibility test, physically their eyes may not be sealed shut, even though the experience inside of hypnosis was quite profound. So there is the possibility that you can shoot yourself in the foot if you're not careful about how you execute the convincers in your session. So if you do decide to go ahead and try one or two, start by making sure you're working with someone who responds physically to the suggestibility tests, whether it's an authoritative test or whether it is a permissive test. Make sure that your client has got a physical response before you do the use hypnotic phenomenon, before you use eye catalepsy, before you use a rigid arm, before you create the feeling of numbness. But above all, no matter what your client is like, whether they're physical, whether they're emotional, whether they've got inner dialogue, always test the therapy. Always test to make sure that you've got the results that you want and your client has got the outcomes they want. Across the board, it doesn't matter about suggestibility tests. It doesn't matter whether the session went well or went badly in your eyes or not. Get out there and you make sure that you test the therapy, and the key to success for that is to do one thing really, really well, and two, what's the second one? Make sure you have an anchor installed so that they can connect with those feelings of calmness, relaxation, and confidence.